Our first guest is a humanitarian, an award-winning actor, a best-selling author, an entrepreneur, health and wellness ambassador, educator, and philanthropist. He stands for Black excellence because that's who he is. Welcome to the Blueprint Men Summit, Mr. Hill Harper. Hill, how you doing, man? So glad to have you again. Appreciate you always understanding what we're trying to do here and wanting to participate.
Hey, Brother Lewis, thank you so much. And listen, putting together the Blueprint Men Summit is so vital and so important. And having brothers come together as a collective to speak with each other, to share our concerns, to share our spirits, to share our energy, to share our ideas, learn from each other. This is vital. You know, Dr. King said that we're all tied together in the single garment of mutual destiny. And obviously 2020 shows us that that's absolutely true. So we need to be together. We need to have forums like this. So thank you for what you do putting this together. And I'm so happy to be here to be in conversation with you.
2020 has been eye-opening in so many ways for this country during these two pandemics, COVID-19 and systematic racism. Have you been surprised by any of the reactions, whether it's been the civil uprising or the denials that either of these two pandemics exist?
You know, when we talk about 2020 in terms of vision, we're talking about having perfect vision or perfect eyesight. And I think that this year, if it's done one thing, it's given us very clear vision as to the work that we all need to do to create safety, health, prosperity, happiness within our community. And we know it's a massive challenge. You know, am I surprised about the way things have played out? I mean, obviously, I did not see COVID coming and a pandemic coming, and nor did I see the death of George Floyd coming or Breonna Taylor. But we know that there's been many Georges and Breonnas, and how many aren't caught on tape. But ultimately, the point is that systemic racism and the vestiges of it have been around for 401 years. You know, the 1619 Project and knowing that from 1619 on, that this country's been built in many ways off of free labor of Black and brown skinned people and underpaid labor and all of the things that have come out of that and we continue to see. It's no wonder that COVID hit us harder, hit Black and brown folks harder. You know, it's like that old saying, you know, they used to say when America catches a cold, Black folks catch the flu. Now folks say, yeah, well, when America gets coronavirus, Black folks end up on the ventilator. And we know that most folks don't come off the ventilator once they're on it. And so we have to be self-determinative. We have to have forums like this and work together to take care of ourselves and our community, because we know help is not coming from outside.
The Black community, especially Black men, has suffered a tremendous amount of pain in both situations. What do you think are the underlying conditions of these pandemics?
Well, you know, I've been working around the issues of health and wellness for a while, because in 2010, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. My father had died of cancer. My uncle had died of cancer. My grandfather died of cancer. And I was, there are things that they've done in their lives that I wanted to follow in their footsteps, but that's the cancer piece was not one that I wanted to follow. And, you know, we just have to educate ourselves more and be diligent about our health, to be quite honest. One of the big things I've been advocating is vitamin D. You know, we as melanin people, we tend to have very low levels of vitamin D. And we know that the data has shown us that there's a connective or relationship to how hard COVID hits you and your vitamin D levels. So I've just been talking to brothers about, hey, brothers, get your vitamin D3 and your K2. You got to get that. The K2 helps you absorb the vitamin D, and we need to get our vitamin D levels up. Now, that's just one thing. And then let's talk about the other side of the ball. We talk about stress. We talk about high blood pressure. We talk about heart disease. We talk about all the other things that have been killing us for years. And then we need to deal with what some of the fundamental stressors are. Number one, what we put into our body that fried foods, all of these things. We need to stop that. But number two, the stress. What's the number one cause of stress for most Black men across this country? It's money-related issues. And so what do we got to do? We got to deal with our finances. We got to deal with money. I wrote the book, The Wealth Cure, specifically to talk about financial literacy and dealing with money. And not just money as, okay, I want to get that money, dog. I want to get rich. But the idea of using money as a tool to actually create a foundation for building the life you want to build. It's different than saying, I just want to make that money or I want to get rich. It's using money as part of a plan, and how can we use it specifically as part of a blueprint to build a life? Because I believe we're all active architects of our own life. And so if we really talk about these fundamental pillars, we talk about our health and wellness, nutrition, exercise, high blood pressure, heart disease, cancer, etc., COVID, blah. Then we talk about money and access to capital, decreasing stress around money, lowering our debt levels, etc. And then we talk about love and opening your heart and loving people in your community, loving people around you. Those are three big pillars that lead to one thing I think as Black men we don't talk about enough, is that why do we want all this stuff? We just fundamentally want to be happy. We don't talk about happiness amongst Black men enough. We always talk about, man, I need to get this, or I'm trying to get this, or I'm working on this, dog, or I'm trying to get this. And what if I just, okay, let's be very reductive. Brother, what makes you happy? How can we build a life where I call it unreasonable happiness. And people say, man, what's unreasonable happiness mean? It means that people look at you and say, dang, that dude's unreasonably happy. It's unreasonable that he's that happy. Like, how does that work, right? How do I get to be like you, man? And so I want brothers to think about being unreasonably happy and then being reductive in terms of creating a blueprint to get there and building a life for that. And I think it really goes to those pillars. I call them wealth factors: health, relationship to money, and relationship to people, love, community, family, friends, a significant other, kids, cross-generational relationships. And I think those are three major pillars that we as Black men need to talk about.
We've had civil uprising in cities all across America. What's the next step to create change?
I think fundamentally you cannot have social justice, social equity without economic justice. It comes down to, we have to go to the root. We have to understand that systemic racism was born out of an economic reality, right? Desire for free labor, building massive amounts of wealth by using free labor to create a country, period, point blank. You cannot excise money and economics from systemic racism. They go hand in hand because that's why it was created. And so we have to think about, how can we decrease the wealth gap? How can we build wealth within our community? And I believe we're in an unprecedented time to do that, because technology allows us an opportunity to break down certain barriers to entry that before, quite frankly, have been erected and we've been locked out. And so I have been really working diligently on a program and a platform to build Black wealth. I want to build Black cross-generational wealth. I want to make more Black millionaires than anyone has ever created in history. I want to create more Black wealth than anyone has ever created in history. And I really believe that there's this inextricable link between racial justice and economic justice.
Black men have been attacked and targeted so long that it has created institutionalized behavior, not just in the criminal justice system, but in institutions and environments all across America. How can we change that?
We have to start to change that by understanding it's self-determinative. We have spent a lot of time working on trying to get other people to act properly, so to speak. to act justly. I think it's become very clear that folks don't want to do it. If you think about, that saying that's been going around the internet, it's very, very true. When folks say, listen, racism is so American that when you protest racism, they feel like you're protesting America, right? And if that's the case, and if that is true, which I would suggest to you it is, because you're talking about America does not know how to exist and has not existed outside of a systemic racist context. And so for 401 years, which is longer than the country has even been here, the exploitation of Black and brown people has existed for the gain of others. And the governmental institutions have been built off that. Almost every building you see has been built off of that notion and that context. And so we have to start looking inward and inside of our community, because if you look back at times where we have been the most aggressively prosperous, it's been times when we have done it for ourselves. We weren't looking to outside folks to solve the problem. We have the ability and the genius to solve. The brilliance is already in our community. We can solve it. I was asked to be the honorary national co-chair of the redevelopment of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma by the Greenwood Chamber of Commerce. And it was such an honor. And it's the centennial. May 31st, 2021 will be the centennial of the Black Wall Street massacre. But if you just think about the lessons that the Black Wall Street up until May 31st, 1921, what that represented, where a dollar changed hands 7 times within the ecosystem or within the community, where true wealth was being built, where there were over 40 acres of 1,200 homes and businesses, all Black owned, where there were Black insurance companies, Black banks, Black barbers, Black butchers, where there was an ownership mentality. I hear young cats say, man, we got to buy the block. I'm like, forget buy the block. Let's own the city. We can own these cities and we can control them. There's a great deal of undervalued assets across this country that we actually live in, and we can figure out ways to control it. Other folks tend to come in and start buying up things right from under us before we actually realize, oh, dang, boom, we can do this. And the way we can do it is looking within and being more self-determinative, I believe. And technology, I believe, allows us to create these ecosystems, exchange money in different ways, and create access to capital that we've never had that opportunity to do. And so that's the work I'm doing. I really believe that.
So take a minute and step back to your 20-year-old self when you would have been what they call nowadays a Gen Zer. So with what you know now, what would you be doing today as a 20-year-old?
No question, I would be building my own tech-related businesses. We are just at the infancy of what is to come in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of virtual reality, in terms of technology and communication, in terms of blockchain technology, and in terms of cryptocurrencies. And I truly believe that as a young person, connecting with someone that could offer some measure of a very lean amount of capital to help start a business or businesses in this space, that's how we create true wealth. When we think about Jeff Bezos, who first investor were his parents, $250,000. We think about Steve Jobs, his business was set up in his parents' garage. We think about Zuckerberg, again, parents. Here's the deal. Many of our young 20-year-olds don't have parents that can give them $250,000, $200,000. But in this world right now, you don't need $250,000 to start that business. You may need $2,000, $3,000. The barriers to entry have come down. It's just like if young brothers come up to me, man, yo, brother, I want to be a filmmaker. The beautiful thing is, if you got this phone right here, it shoots 4K, you can make a movie. You can edit the movie on here too. The thing is that people often rush to the tech without actually developing their skills though. So that same young brother may say, brother, I'm gonna make a movie, but he hasn't actually really honed the script to the point where it's this groundbreaking, beautiful film, although he can shoot it now. And the same holds true for any other business within the tech ecosystem. The barriers to entry or the cost of creating that. There's so many different skeletal types of opportunities that are out there that you can white label and do other things that create that's already existing, that you can create businesses quite quickly and scale them quite quickly, quite cheaply. And that's where I would say, but fundamentally though, follow your heart, follow your passion. What are you passionate about? What makes your heart beat faster? And then follow that. There's something you can do within that, no matter what that is, and follow it, because so often people are being told or projected to young people, you should do this or you should do that. And then they end up doing something they don't love, so they don't put their whole into it, and then they don't meet with success. And ultimately, it's about doing something that you love and enjoy so that work doesn't feel like work. And I would remind young people of that. Make sure if your work starts to feel like work, then you're not doing the right thing.
For African-American men who sit in corporate America now, what should the discussion be like with white coworkers?
You know, I think that we have to talk about what privilege looks like and what it feels like, because the connection that so many folks have trouble having is like, hey man, my life hasn't been easy. I've had to overcome this or that or this or that or that. And certainly when we talk about privilege and white privilege and what that looks like, somehow folks want to basically interpret that as, well, your life's been significantly easier than mine, and blah, 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 blah. And what we want people to understand is that it's the systemic and institutionalized harm that really causes the problem. Less so, and certainly the individual harm causes problems. But the scale of the problems come from systemic and institutionalized racism, systemic and institutionalized harm, from which they are unwitting beneficiaries. And the way I like to describe it to people oftentimes is I talk about the air. And they say, what do you mean about the air? I said, well, when you're breathing clean air, you don't notice it, do you? They're like, yeah. I mean, I say, well, how often are you conscious of your breath? Well, I'm just not. Exactly. And so when you're breathing dirty air or you're caught in a situation where there's smoke everywhere, you're conscious of your breath, right? Yes. So just think about racism that way. Black folks are metaphorically breathing dirty air continuously. We're conscious of it. It's there. It's palpable. Every interaction we have with police is there. It's palpable. Every time we walk into a store and someone follows us from row to row, every time we go to apply for a loan and our interest rate's higher, or we have to jump through more hoops and we get denied a loan over here. Every time we go to buy a car and for some reason the price is higher and we can't get people to negotiate in the same way. Every time we're actually going to pay rent and our rent is different. Every time that we have to live in communities and the schools aren't as good. Every time, we can keep going on, but that's dirty air. Every day, that's our reality. And you don't notice it because you have clean air. And I've been doing a lot of work in Flint, Michigan recently around the Flint water crisis for the past 6 years. And people said, man, that's still going on 6 years later. And again, it speaks to the same point. Yeah, if Flint water crisis had happened in Bel Air or Beverly Hills or Westchester or Orange or out in the suburbs of Chicago or down in Palm Beach, Florida, it wouldn't be 6 years later and the same problem exists, right? So folks got to understand there's clean air, there's dirty air. And when you're and they think that the clean air is normal, which it should be for everybody, but it's just not.
You've received a lot of academic education over your lifetime for sure. How important has it been for your confidence and the things that you believe you can do?
Certainly academics for me have been critical. But I think that we actually speak about education the wrong way, particularly to young people. We speak about education from the standpoint of do this so you can do that, which is automatically limiting. And the whole idea to me about education is the idea to expand options, not limit them. What do I mean by that? People come up to me and say, Harper, you have 2 graduate degrees from Harvard, but you do a job that you don't even need a high school diploma to do. How does that make sense? And that just shows me whenever someone says that is that they've been actually fed the wrong thing about education. And we do, young people, old people, it doesn't matter who, a disservice the way we speak about education. The whole idea should be to learn more, add more tools to your toolkit, so you have more options, so you can apply ideas from here to there. You can be a better critical thinker. You can be a more creative thinker. So for instance, I took archaeology classes, philosophy classes. I took politics. I studied law. I did all these things, not such that I could be an archaeologist or necessarily even be a lawyer, but so I could actually use the skills that come from learning about those things to whatever makes my heart beat faster. And that's how we should be talking about education. It's not about the degrees you have. It's not even about the school you go to. It's about what learning. I think learning should be a lifetime activity. That's why this isn't just for young people. We also talk about education as if you should stop after you're a certain age, which is ridiculous. You know, you look at Barack Obama, we met at first year of law school. I went straight to grad school from undergrad. He had taken 6-7 years off in Chicago before he went back to school. He was almost 30 years old before he went back to school to improve himself, right? So the point is that at the longevity of how long we're living now, going back to school at 40 or 50 years old, taking different classes, certainly virtually or non-virtually, adding more tools to your toolkit. I need to learn Spanish. I'm ashamed that I can't speak Spanish. There's so many brothers and sisters I would like to be able to communicate with using Espanol that I can't right now. So that's on my list. I have to add that skill to my toolkit if I want to achieve some of the goals that I'd like to achieve in communicating with larger scale audiences and more people, right? So that's part of my work. But at the end of the day, there are so many things I want to continue to learn and broaden. And so education, learning, growing is critical for creating more optionality. And the more options you have, the more likely you can be in choosing or finding something that you love. And that's the key. And we've kind of come full circle to this idea of happiness. Why do you want more options? So you have more ability or opportunity to be happy, right? So you find something that fills your soul and your spirit. And that's the thing that I think many of us have to really do some work on internally and individually. And that is opening up our heart. You know, as brothers, we've had to develop calluses in many ways because of systemic and institutionalized racism. And we've had to get hard to survive. And that hardness can sometimes start to close off your heart. And when your heart starts to get closed off, your spirit, your soul starts to get, depressed. I just did a Zoom last night with a bunch of young men that were reading my first book as part of their book group. And a lot of the young brothers came on and they were like, this book was great. And thank you. And I just had to shake him through the screen a little bit. I said, brother, where's your energy, man? Where's that joy? Where's that soul spirit? Where's that? And they were like, what do you mean? I said, it's in there, but you're putting these layers over it. You can be vulnerable with me. But most importantly, allow yourself to be vulnerable with yourself so you truly can find who you are, not who society is trying to tell you to be. We have to stay with our vulnerability. Even in our music, for instance, I said, think about what you listen to. If your music that you're listening to is making you less vulnerable, then it's leading you down a path to close off. There's no happiness in that closure. Think about it. There are artists out there making music that's about opening up. There's artists out there that make music about closing down. I'm not judging the lyrics. I'm not judging the content. I'm talking about your psyche and your soul. So think about what you're listening to. Is it opening you up or is it closing you down? And then make a choice.
The election is right around the corner. He'll look right into the camera and tell us why we all must vote.
This election is critically important. And I want to be very clear. A lot of people who hit me and asked, Hill, why are you talking about voting all the time, man? We had 8 years of a black president, didn't do nothing. Nothing happened. What's up, man? So voting clearly doesn't matter. You're absolutely wrong. Voting matters because you know what? If you sit out, someone's still going to occupy that seat. And you don't have to agree with everything a candidate says to vote for them, nor should you expect to. But the point is that ultimately, who sits in all of those seats from the top of the ballot all the way through impacts your life on a daily basis. 80% of DAs run unopposed, and DAs are one of the critical. You want to see police reform and police treat people differently? You change a DA and see how DAs if DAs start charging cops and stop charging cops that just pick up cats on some low level carry stuff, blah, 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 you'd see behavior change. I'm not saying that that's a complete elixir for criminal justice reform, but I'm saying that's one piece. The judges that are in front of you, that's another piece. This current president has appointed over 210 judges because, watch this, because we did not vote in people that represented our values into the U.S. Senate during Barack Obama's last 6 years in office. He was not able to appoint judges. So it left 189 vacancies for the next president. And this person has been filling them left, right, and center. And you don't even hear about it. But you know what? Those appointments are lifetime appointments. Lifetime. They're going to affect you for your lifetime. And so here's the deal. The people who occupy these seats matter. No one can say different. It matters. Now, does it matter as much as what you do on a daily basis to create a life for yourself, your family, and your community? No. And no one's saying it is. It doesn't end with voting. It starts with voting when you have the opportunity to vote. That's one time a year, right? There's 364 other days that are just as important that you need to do your work. But voting is a piece of that work, and it's just one thing you got to do. You have to vote, period. Period, period, period. Folks wouldn't work so hard to keep you from voting if it didn't matter. It matters, and if you believe otherwise, then that means you've been co-opted. You've been tricked. And I feel bad for you because that means their manipulation won and tricked you.
Thank you, my brother, for being here. Your words of wisdom are always appreciated. We thank you for your commitment to our community and always to the betterment of ourselves. Thank you, appreciate you.
Thank you, Brother Lewis. So proud of you, man. Continue shining the light. And yes, vote like your life depends on it because it does. It does.